I'm rowing like mad on that small boat, but I'm still tied to the dock, which is kind of a metaphor for life, I think. You keep going and sometimes you're tied up. So apparently I was the happiest at my birthday when I got a roll of film. In fact, I have 2 there, so I'm super happy. And I'm in high school on the right with my grandmother's old Argus camera. I had hair then, yes, I did. I was that kind of nerd that wrote down every boat he saw go by during the day. So I think that's 1966 on the left. And then my penmanship got significantly better. We got into the 70s. And I would write down details about the camera settings and what have you. So at this point in the 70s, I'm in high school. I lucked into meeting this gentleman in Sault Ste. Marie. His name is Tom Mance, and he was the founder of the Know Your Ships book. He founded it in 1959 as a guide to the boats that people saw go by their house on the water. He thought it would be handy. People would like to have that. It was originally supposed to be called Know Your Ships That Pass Our Shores. I'm really glad that he didn't, because that's too many words. If I could go back in time, I'd convince him to call it Know Your Boats, because that's what everybody calls them, boats. But you know, it works, so don't mess with it. He got his start. From his dad. His father was John Mance, who was a marine photographer at the locks in the 20s and 30s. So they get the crew out of the back end of the boat, and they're going through the locks, and John or one of the other guys would take the picture of the crew, and then when they came back up, they'd sell the pictures to the guys on the boat. So that's how Tom kind of got into it from his dad, and I got into it from him. He taught me how to take pictures of boats. He taught me how he had a dark room in his basement. He showed me how to develop film, how to file pictures, negatives, all that kind of stuff. He would take me occasionally around the Great Lakes when he was making deliveries of books or had to go someplace to Cleveland or the Welland Canal, and I kind of got an introduction to that life. He let me help on the book in my early years. I had a picture published. The first one was in 1968 when I was just in junior high school or entering high school. That's a powerful thing for a kid to see your picture published in your name. So he also got me a job on a freighter when I got out of high school, and you'll see that coming up here in a minute. Also around about that time, I found out about an organization called the Marine Historical Society of Detroit. 1966, there's my membership card. I've been president of the Marine Historical Society of Detroit for 22 years. So it's very interesting how these early seeds that get planted when you're a kid, what happens when they mature later in life. Tom also got me a job as a tour guide on the freighter museum up there called the Valley Camp. I was still underage. My mother had to get a permit from the county or the city that I could work underage. I got paid $2 an hour in 1971. And all that money, by the way, went for film and developing. That stuff was expensive. I got into high school. I was the yearbook photographer, so I was that nerd. Again, look at that hair, man. I can't tell you the hair. Where is it? Where'd it go? In the summer, I got out of high school, which was 1973. Tom got me this job on this freighter, the Ernest R. Breach, that carried iron ore pellets for the Ford Motor Company from usually Marquette down to the Detroit River Rouge plant to be made into cars. I was in the galley department. Our boat carried 8 passengers. They were guests of the company, big wigs from Ford and their wives and families. And I was basically their cabin boy. You know, I scrubbed their bed, or the child rather made their bed, made sure that there was plenty of ice for their copious drinking at night, and just made sure everything was clean and neat. So in the smaller picture, I'm standing there at the right in my galley whites. I wound up not actually continuing on the Great Lakes. I kind of wanted to test it out, test the waters to see if it was for me, and I guess it wasn't. So what really sealed the deal was I got back to college. I went into journalism, and the editor of the Sault Ste. Marie newspaper came along and put, his fatherly arm around me and said, hey, Roger, I got a deal for you. If you promise you won't go back on the boats next year, I will guarantee you all the work you want, all through college, all your breaks, Christmas, all summer, an internship, everything. And I couldn't turn that down. So that was the end of my working on the boats. They wanted me back the next year, and I had to tell them no. So went into the newspaper business. I landed a job at the Ann Arbor News in 1979. There I am. So the place, Ann Arbor, is like not exactly on the water, right? It's in like the middle of lower Michigan. It's a long way to any water. So I managed to put myself in a spot where there was no boats, no water. So I did my best. And I should say also that my newspaper training actually prepared me to do what I do with Know Your Ships, because I learned all those skills. Page layout, design, writing, reporting, interviewing people, advertising, marketing, promotion, all that kind of stuff. I learned at the newspaper. So I was easily able, and later in my life, when I was no longer at the newspaper, to apply all of those skills. I became an expert at convincing my editors that there was a story about ships that they needed to have in their newspaper, and I need to have to go write it. So I got to interview the Captain Cooper, the Arthur M. Anderson, the ship that was following the head of the Fitzgerald. That night he came to town to get an award from the Kiwanis Club or something, and I had a chat with him. I recently found my notes from that story from 1976 or 76, yeah. I found those notes in my mother's possessions when I was cleaning out her house. She saved them. She had the forethought to save those notes. I also wrote a shipping column from Ann Arbor about Sault Ste. Marie called the Porthole. I wrote about passenger cruising on the Great Lakes for the Ann Arbor News. Jacques Cousteau came to Detroit, and they sent me over there to interview him. So I remember him quite clearly. The oceans, they are dying. His Jacques Cousteau beard and the Calypso was anchored out there. The editors thought it would be cute to have put me in a sailor hat, take this silly picture. The picture underneath that, that's from the Dawson Great Lakes Museum on Belle Isle. Said, oh, you have to do a story about that great place. It's so close. I convinced my editors to do this kind of stuff. In around 1999, 2000, with another fellow, we founded this magazine called Great Laker, stories about ships, sailors, lighthouses, and tourism, which we did for 3 years, and then we sold it to another company, Seaway Review, which promptly ruined it, but that's another story. So we had stories like the Flower Lady was a florist in Detroit who sent bouquets of flowers out to all the boats on her, because she knew that the families were away, the guys were away from their families, and Father's Day or whatever, she'd send out these flowers. So she was called the Flower Lady. What a sweetheart. Anders, the captain of the vessel Algo Lake, he just passed away. Bob McGreevy, a talented Great Lakes artist. So I was writing all this stuff about boats all along. And then the Ann Arbor News closed, lost my job. The parent company out in New Jersey decided that Ann Arbor was a great place to test an online newspaper with an educated population. So we're going to close this newspaper of 150 years and fire everybody and hire them back at the online company for less than what we're paying them now. Have you heard that story before? You know how that works. Paige is the next journalist, so she knows what's going on with that. So in the bottom picture, I'm like, what, me care? I lose my job. I went to work for a company in northern Michigan called Seaway Review, and they have a quarterly magazine there. They wrote about ships in the shipping industry. I worked for them for a while. I wrote articles for places such as Michigan History Magazine, and I helped edit this Greenwood's Guide to Great Lakes Shipping, which is actually kind of a competitor to my Know Your Ships book, but not, because it's not as good, right? So, for all my life, I've puttered around in a small boat taking boat pictures. Ever since I was a little kid, I had a 12-foot aluminum boat with a 3-horsepower motor. And you want to go backwards, you had to spin it around. And so you remember that, right? So I'm out in the shipping channel in this tiny boat with a 3-horse motor with these freighters. So I figured out that if I went upriver, my grandmother couldn't see me from the front window anymore, so she couldn't yell at me. So I can't believe I survived this whole thing, by the way. So, but I did. So I graduated up to a bigger boat for quite a while. And then 2 years ago, I graduated up to not the red boat, although that's a bigger boat. But the pontoon boat there, I got to a certain age where my knees don't work so well, and climbing in and out of open fishing boats and stuff is becoming a hazard with balance issues. So I discovered the wonderful world of pontoon boating where you step right in and you have a comfortable seat and some chairs for your friends and a table, and it's quiet. So I would never go back, but I love those days with the pontoon boat, with a fishing boat too. Another thing I get to do now is go around the Great Lakes and do things like what I'm doing here tonight. In this slide, I'm at the National Museum of the Great Lakes in Toledo, Ohio, and I'm talking about my mentor, Tom Matz. There he is on the screen, and there I am. And someday I hope that there'll be somebody else, and I'm on the screen, and all three of us are in a row, and we'll get to that in a second. But I love getting around on the lakes, and I love to meet the people, not only like you folks that buy the book, the fans, but also the stores, the outlets. We have a couple of hundred stores around the Great Lakes, both US and Canadian. And I like to get out and meet those folks and chat with them. And it's just a lot of fun to do. Other things is not so fun, are bookkeeping and accounting. So that's not fun, and I put it off. And also I don't do a good job at it. And I don't sell advertising, because if I did, I'd give it all away. So I have a sharp, hard-hearted ad saleswoman that won't give any deals to anybody. So the theme has been, so far that I grew up on the water, and I got a job that was away from the water, but I still managed every way that I possibly could to figure out how to be close to the water by writing about ships. And that was been a blessing. 25 years ago, it's a personal story, of course, is I was diagnosed with throat cancer. And I was going through the radiation treatment, and I was reading a magazine story about people who talked about their regrets as they were facing the end of their life. And I said, gee, how would I answer that question? What regret did I have? And the thing that immediately came to mind is I didn't spend enough time on the water. So I did my best to remedy that situation. I think I've done pretty well with that. So here I am once again getting back to boats and writing about boats. Even though I tried to work on a boat, that didn't work out, but I wound up writing about them, and I get to ride on them, and I don't have to work, and I get to eat food and take boat pictures. That's nice. So here I am on the CSL Niagara in front of the smokestack going through the Welland Canal. So I'm on the Wilfred Sykes, wearing a Wilfred Sykes hat with the Wilfred Sykes on the cover, which might be a little much. I don't know, maybe a little overkill there on the Sykes. I'm on the Herbert C. Jackson down here, on the old Mommy up there. The Mommy was in the end of her life when I got to ride on it. It'd been built in 1929, and it spent its last years hauling salt. And you know what salt does to your car? It does worse to a boat. So the captain said, well, you can take all the pictures you want if you don't show any rust. Well, what a funny guy, because the whole boat was rust. But I got a lot of pictures from that. So I'm pretending to be captain of the Edward L. Ryerson. And on the old St. Mary's Challenger, that's now a barge by that name, that was converted to a barge right over here. The other top picture, I'm on the deck of the Edward L. Ryerson with the famous rock star captain, Eric Treese. You may have seen all over the internet, Colorado Storm Chaser, E.T. the Captain. So he is an expert drone photographer. I don't do drones. I leave it to the kids. Captain Treese let me fly his drone once, and I flew it into a tree. So I said, I never touched another one again. Spend my life perfecting pictures from a boat, from the shore, and I'm just going to do that. I'm happy with doing that. I'm on the Algoma Niagara, Equinox rather, one of the big new self-unloaders Canada's building, with Captain Sean O'Donoghue, kind of a legend. On the Canadian side, especially when you get him a little bit inebriated and he starts singing sea shanties. It's very good. He's from Newfoundland. And what do I do in the winter when the lakes are frozen? Hey, there's more boats out there in the world, right? So the Victory 2 there, I took that from Detroit to Quebec in 2019. That was a wonderful trip. I've gone on Holland America a number of times. I went through the Panama Canal. I went up to Alaska on it, east coast of US from Boston up to Quebec. Love traveling by boat. Here I am in Quebec City with the Chateau Frontenac, the old Frontenac, the fort up on the hill there, Alaska, the glacier, a little bit more of Montreal down on there. And last October, I have always had a dream to go on the Mississippi River. Knew nothing about the South, never had been to the South, had only read about it. So I got about a trip on the American Queen, largest overnight steam-powered passenger ship on the rivers in North America. The ship was built in 1995, but the engine was a 1932 vintage steam engine from a Corps of Engineers dredge that had been left to rot, but the engine was fine. So they put it in this ship. What a beautiful, graceful, old throwback to the days of Mark Twain. Yesterday, I learned that it tied up in Houma, LA, and it's going to be scrapped. Aww. I cannot believe it, that they're going to scrap this beautiful historic ship. The reason is its parent company went bankrupt over the winter and had to sell all its assets, and another company bought it to keep it out of the hands of a competitor. And they think people want modern, fast boats. And no, not everybody does. So they're just cutting this beautiful ship up, and I just can't believe it. It's kind of like what happened on the Great Lakes in the 1967 when the last passenger ship, the South American, was taken out of service. But that one was old and didn't meet up to the fire standards. But it was the last overnight steamship on the Great Lakes. We didn't have any overnight boats for years. And this was the last big ship on the Mississippi. Those smokestacks aren't for show. They're used. They're lowered when you have to go under a bridge. It was quite fun to watch those stacks go down and go up. There's a steam calliope on board, and the guy plays like Mississippi River themed songs while you're going down the river and the steam comes out. Just watching that paddle wheel go around is mesmerizing. And you stand in a certain spot, you get wet. I'm just very saddened about that whole thing. Another couple things I do in my vast amount of free time, because it's about the boats, right? And because I'm trained to do it, I do the Sioux Locks Visitor Center Association newsletter. I'm on that group's board of directors because it's all about the boats, right? And it gives me pleasure to give back to an area that was very important to me in my life, the Sioux Locks. Also, I'm involved with the boatnerd.com website. They have a news page. I was a newspaper reporter. So there you go. As I mentioned, I'm president of the Marine Historical Society of Detroit. I also do their newsletter, which I've done since 2011, which comes out every month. I put together our annual color calendar, and I founded, and it's being continued by others, an initiative now where we're seeking people's photo collections and we're scanning them for history. And if the people want them back, they can have them back with a copy of the scan for free. Or if they just want to get rid of them, we'll scan it and we donate the originals to the Center for Great Lakes Research at Bowling Green State University. So a lot of amazing photos have come out of people's drawers, boxes in the basement. I was given a massive collection that took a U-Haul truck to get to me from the basement of somebody who was sitting at home during COVID. They'll clean up the basement. Oh my God, what are we going to do with Dad's stuff? And they heard about what I'm doing and they donated it all. And unfortunately, some of our older members pass away, and either they arrange to have it donated or their family does. So here's a couple of photos. My good friend Jim Hoffman passed away from cancer. He had the most massive collection I've ever seen of everything, including 50 life rings. And Sterling Berry, the guy up in the top there, he was 92 and COVID got him. And he had actually arranged to have all his stuff placed elsewhere even before he got sick. So that was fairly easy, but I got a lot of his stuff. Skip Meyer down in the corner was Mr. eBay. He outbid everybody on historic slides on eBay. You knew you could not go against Skip and win. So His wife donated his collection, his massive slide collection to us. And currently it's residing in covered in my living room because I haven't finished scanning it. That's the thing, people, they give you this stuff and you're done with it. What do you do with it? I got to get it down to Bowling Green. But I've got 2 more collections I'm going through right now. I've kind of become the Grim Reaper of this stuff. But this is the kind of pictures that we're getting from these collections. This particular collection is Bob Zalesnik. That's up in the corner. That's his daughter, Virginia. She's the one that was cleaning out her basement and gave everything to the historical group that her father had been secretary of for 30 years. And I look at these pictures and the color, look at the color. Cannot believe these pictures are in existence. And now they're back and they're available for people in the world to see. So very happy with my team. I've got 6 other people that are scanning nonstop. We've got professional scanning equipment. And these will all be up online. We're working on an online photo and database, so that's going to be fun. Something else very, very important to me is the next generation. Know Your Ships came to me as a gift from the founder. He just gave it to me. I'm almost 70. It's time to think about passing it on. Unfortunately, I have to choose from these crazy people. These are the boat nerds. And we are very lucky to have a lot of young people who are interested in the boats. Like these guys up here on the left here, a boat nerd picnic at Sault Ste. Marie there, boat cruise at the Soo Locks, ignore the guy with the octopus hat. These are more my closer group right here. Did that skip a slide? No, it didn't. Okay. The next one should be the one, never mind. So it's the young people, it's the kids. So a reader sent me this one of the kid reading the book there. That's at one of my book signings. He's got freighters on his shirt. His brother has the Stuart J. Court on his shirt. They are just absolutely crazy for freighters. It amazes me how many kids and how many calls I get from, say, a grandmother saying, my 10-year-old grandson can't get enough of these boats. Oh, by the way, we live in Montana. How does that happen? The internet, the webcams, the Edmund Fitzgerald. You talk to kids, to anybody, and ask them how they got into this. That's one of the things they'll say, the Titanic, the Fitzgerald, the webcams. Every now and again, the guy that founded boatnerd.com got into it through his first copy of Know Your Ships when he was a kid. So I call it a gateway drug, but it's a good one. Last year, I brought a couple of younger people on board to learn the ropes, basically, to learn how, because there's a lot of moving parts to this book that I just know from doing it for so long. So I got to get these guys trained up. We clean up good. So the middle guy is Sam Hankinson. He is the port development coordinator for the Port of Monroe, Michigan. Right now, he's in Spain representing the port, getting cargoes lined up internationally to come into the Great Lakes. The guy on the right works for Burnett Dairy, big dairy in Wisconsin. He's the promotions and marketing, accounting, and he'll handle that end of the book. And Sam is more of the creative guy. He'll do kind of what I do with the layout and design and the photos. And this is down the road. I don't plan to stop. I just want to have plans made. So I do have those and I feel good about it. People have asked me what's my favorite picture I've ever taken and put in the book. The Edward L. Ryerson had been laid up right over here in Sturgeon Bay forever, right? And nobody ever thought it was going to run again. And then a miracle happened and they got some contracts and it came out in 1986, I believe. And it was Memorial Day weekend and I was out in my little boat. It's coming down, beautiful day. I'm out there taking pictures and the captain comes out and I thought he's going to yell at me for being too close. He says, hey, send me a copy of the picture. Okay, so I had some 8x10s made and I sent them to him at the Marine Post Office at the Locks. And email was brand new at that point, but I had an account. I got a message from him. He said, you never sent me a bill. I said, well, it's because there's some things I do in my hobby that are my hobby, not my business. I'm not going to charge you for those pictures. So, okay, thank me. Then the next year I put that picture on the cover of Know Your Ships. You can see that there in the little inset. So I contacted him by that email and I said, put you on the cover. I want to get you a book. Where can I send it? He said, well, I'm not sure when we're going to be up by the Soo, but my mom lives near you in Ann Arbor. Why don't you just make arrangements to meet her and give her the books? It turned out she was the law school librarian at the University of Michigan Law School. And I did meet her, and we became best friends. We travel together all the time now. So Captain Treese was able to take his mother on trips every year on the boat he was on. So she started taking me. And that's kind of one way I got on the Sykes, the Ryder side of the block. And then other trips I had were because I knew people on the ships or in the industry that got me on rides. So very fortunate with that this book has brought me this kind of a freighter family. I mentioned the boat nerds, of course, but also I can tell you that I might know somebody on almost every boat I see, at least the U.S. ones, Canadian ones too. I'll go out in the river. My pontoon boat's got "Know Your Ships" on the side there. I get salutes from people. So I know the mate on the Arthur M. Anderson pretty well because I met him when I took a trip on the Stuart J. Court, and then he moved over there. So he's out there. I'm out there. I get a salute, and it just so happened I was out there for the next trip. I got a salute, and then the next trip I didn't go up. And I get a text from the pilot house. Are you coming out? Well, if you insist, I guess I'll come out and get my salute. So that's really fun. I just get a kick out of it. You know, hearing a salute from a boat whistle never gets old to me. Makes my day. There was a saltwater boat coming up the river, and I was taking my pictures. I got to know some of the pilots, and I'm looking at the boat, and I see a guy coming out with a big blue garbage bag and throwing it over the side. He's beeping his horn. It's like, okay, they must want me to come out and get that blue garbage bag. So I go up and I get it, and it's got hats and shirts from the shipping company because they'd heard about me from the pilot, because I give the pilots books every year to give to the captains. So he wanted to give me something and threw it over. But I got an email from him. He said, that's the first time I've ever thrown a garbage bag off of the vest. But I was really, I was on cloud nine for a week for that. It was silly stuff, but it's kind of nice and it makes a difference. Plus, who doesn't love boat swag? So, in honor of our 60th anniversary, I published a hardcover book called Know Your Ship's Decades, which had pictures from all the years of our book in it. And I woefully underestimated the demand, so we sold out in a very short period of time. So I'm working on Decade 2, which I hope it comes out next year or the year after with more of those pictures and ship stories and all that kind of stuff. This is our current cover. One thing I absolutely love to do, I mean, I worked in a newspaper. What did I do? I told people stories. I did a lot of feature stories about interesting people and what they did. And that was my favorite thing to do. I'm thinking, oh, I've got a book. I can tell people stories in my book. So half of Know Your Ships, if you see it as listings, the other half is ship, sailor, stories, and adventures. And that changes every year, which gives me an opportunity to do what I think I do the best, which is talking to and about people. Then last year, we founded a magazine called Extra, which is a summer publication. It's a full magazine. This year, it's going to be 90 pages with more of these ship and sailor stories. I just got off a Coast Guard buoy tender last week. I'm going to do a story about how they take the buoys in and out for this winter and summer, what all that involves. We're interviewing a 93-year-old legendary tugboat captain from Sault Ste. Marie, John Wellington, talking about his life story. So it's all really super interesting. I come to this conclusion: living the life I was meant to live, doing what I was meant to do with the people I was meant to do it with. So I intend to keep on doing it as long as I can. And it's all because of the boats. Everything wonderful in my life can be traced back to something to do with the boats. So there's me on the Stuart J. Court looking like Joe Cool. And Tom Mance, the founder of Know Your Ships, looking very typical there with his camera around his neck. So I do appreciate the great gift that he gave me. And it's all been about making sure his legacy does not go to waste and it's not forgotten. So he's mentioned in every program I do. His name is in every book I publish. There was a big story about him in the Decades book and how he came to be the publisher of Know Your Ships, that whole evolution. Because I believe in passing that torch along to the next generation. And the younger people who are taking over from me are very aware about the people in the industry. If a boat is a floating dump truck, really, it's the people on it that's really actually more interesting. If it weren't for those people, the boat would go. So we're committed to telling their stories And I'll leave it on that note because that's the last slide. And I'll open up the floor and see if you guys have any questions. I know that Jeff probably does. If not, his mother does. I know you guys. They would have kept me up in death's door all day. Seriously, there were so many questions. We had to get to Cana or Kana Island? Cana. I was wrong on both counts.
How do you deal with some of the security and especially the increased security that has been happening with the shipyards and whatnot, especially since 9/11?
Yeah, it's very annoying. I wish I had a thought to gotten into the fence business because that business really boomed after 9/11. Places where you just used to be able to walk up and take a boat picture, there's a fence there now. Big ship is one example. You can't see anything there anymore. You go to the Sulaks and there's new and improved big fences with hooks on the top. You go down the Welland Canal that connects Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. All the boat watching, the majority of the boat watching spots are all fenced off. You can touch a boat going into Lock 7. That's gone. That's fenced off. So they are. When I was a kid, in the 70s or 80s, you could just maybe walk down by a boat that's unloading, and you might be lucky enough that the mate says, "Hey, kid, why don't you come up and take a look?" Well, you can't even get near a boat now to have that happen. That's kind of a sad thing. I remember getting taken down in the engine room of a ship loading in Escanaba by my uncle. Very vaguely, I just remember it was hot and there was a guy down there, but they said, "Hey, come on aboard, take a look." That doesn't happen anymore. So that's kind of sad, but it's the way of the world. What are you gonna do? I just used my motorboat. I got pulled over by the Coast Guard a couple of years ago to make sure it was a safety inspection. My boat says, "No, your ship's on this side." The guy says, "You got anything to do with that book?" Like, "Oh yeah, I'm the guy that writes it." "Oh my, you are?" "Oh my God." All of a sudden it turned from a safety inspection to this BS section. I gave him a book. He goes, "Oh, we got to give you something." So I wound up getting a Coast Guard group suit hat. I missed my boat picture that was going off for, but I kind of made friends out there in the water with coasties. It's kind of fun. You never know what you're going to run up against. Yes.
What is a typical day like when you travel with the crew on any particular boat? What do you observe as a typical day for a typical crew member? I mean, they don't work just 8-hour days. Right?
No, they work watches, 4 on, 8 off, generally, unless they're in port and then they're required to be working whenever they need to be working. But if they're going up the lake, they're on the 4 on, 8 hours off watch, and they get vacations, generally depending on the company and the union contract they have. They're on the boat for 2 months maybe, and they're off for a month. So they get some time with their families. They have a very hard time getting younger people to work on the boats because nobody wants that lifestyle anymore. So the advent of everybody's got a TV, the companies provide TVs for everybody's room. There's satellite TV, you can watch Sunday night football. There's rec rooms, weight rooms, all kinds of incentives, great food to get people to work on the boats. So they're on that kind of a watch system. When I'm on there as a guest, now you have to remember, here's like 20 some people, not just guys, men and women, who look at each other all day and they live where they work. Can you imagine that? So, and it's steel, you're on this big steel box and you got a fresh face that comes aboard to take their picture and give them books. I always take the books. So I'm always treated very well, not because of know your ship's mates. They're just glad to see somebody new. And they're super happy to talk to me about their work. And I kind of enjoy that. That's part of making the friends on the boat. But what do I do on the boat as a passenger? I eat and I eat again, and I eat again. And I read, I work on my publications on my laptop. I take a nap, I sleep, I repeat. So, and I love being out on the water. You know, my phone can't ring most of the time. That's a good thing. I like being on my own private yacht. They feed me.
I'm not familiar with this. I was intrigued when I read it in the paper, but I guess I'm trying to understand the book publishing. through the ages. So have you, because I saw one cover that said 1998, but tell me the history of and development of it.
Yeah,
and how
okay.
it works. I
Yeah,
don't
the development of
understand.
Know Your Ships. It's an interesting story. The gentleman I had a photograph of there, Tom Mance. He was a machinist at a power plant that's on the Sault Ste. Marie waterfront, a hydroelectric power plant. His window overlooked the harbor freighters. And Tom was an idea man, you'd call him now, or Madison Avenue would call him an idea man. He always had ideas. His mind was always going. And this was 1959 that he thought that people might want to buy a book that's about the ships that go by. So he launched his 44 pages. It was a little book with staples in it. And it sold for 50 cents. And he sold it to the tourists at the locks. The gift shop people didn't think anybody would buy it. So he got high school kids, and they had those carpenter aprons with the big pockets. So they'd have books in one pocket and money in the other, and they'd stand outside the lot gates and was selling these books like hotcakes. The gift shop said, "Oh, wait a minute, we got to get in on this." So they started carrying the books. So Tom was he was Italian. He had that Italian thing going on where the gift of gab, and he would travel. He take his cars, Plymouth Fury. I remember that one, and he load the trunk full of books, and he'd head to Duluth, or he'd head to Detroit or Port Huron or the Welland Canal, selling books out of his trunk to these bookstores and gift shops, many of whom I still have that they're still in business. That's what he liked to do. So that's kind of the evolution of the book. Every year it got a little bigger. Now pretty soon it had color pictures. Pretty soon it was up to 77 pages, 88 pages, 129 pages. Now it's 200. We can't go any bigger because it pushes us into another postal rate because of the weight. And it would cost a fortune to mail it at that rate. So it's not going to get any bigger. There's advertising the book. It's all shipping industry related, museums, ship companies, what have you. The advertisers pay for the cost of the printing, basically. So I don't have to raise the price of the book every year. I just raise the price to the advertisers. And you guys don't have to pay at the increase because my costs have gone up by a third in 10 years with the price of paper. I have the book printed in Ann Arbor, Michigan, right down kind of down the street from where I live. A great printing company there called University of LeLievre. And my way of doing things is in the winter, I'm making the book. I use a program called Adobe InDesign, and I'm laying it out. I get probably 1,000 pictures from people around the lakes every year that I look at to decide which ones go in the book. And I make a concerted effort to get some new people every year, so it just doesn't look like the same people. And if you're like 12 years old and you've got a good picture, you've got the inside track because I've got to keep these kids interested. And you know their grandparents are going to buy a copy. That's how it works. So that's kind of, I do that in the winter. I've got my ad saleswoman. We coordinate what all the ads are going to be. Even though I hate it, I make up invoices and billing. And so the book comes out in March, and I'm on the email or on the phone to my stores and my outlets and getting their orders. The orders are coming in over the internet through PayPal. We're packaging books up in my house and mailing them out every day from the post office. I think we had sent out 900 packages the first month the book was out. That's a lot of work. 900 packages the first month that the book is out every year.
Oh.
So we just, the orders come in. I put it up on Facebook that the book is available, and it's like you can sit there and watch the little ticker go around, and the orders come in, like people like Jeff and Irene and whatever.
Somebody else wants to be the first order.
Yeah, there's a competition to see who's going to be first, and that's pretty interesting. And so I put on my book salesman hat. I've taken off my book producer hat, my editor hat, put on my salesman hat, and I start driving books around to outlets that are close to me, and I send the rest out. I get on the phone, I contact, I email, I got my list, get everybody all set up with their books hopefully by Memorial Day. And I do things like this. So I have a book signing every year on the St. Clair River around Port Huron. That's craziness. I've got people lined up out the door. I can't believe it. Actually, they want me on the radio to talk about the book. This thing is blown up. When I was a kid, nobody cared anything about boat watching. There was nobody up there boat watching. Now the internet comes along and social media comes along, and all of a sudden I'm elbowing people out of my way when I'm trying to take a picture because they're all in there trying to get the same picture. So that's kind of the evolution of the book. Mr. Mance passed away and gave it to me. And I carried it on, and now I'm planning to pass it on to other people. I did mention I jokingly call it a gateway drug to the boat watching, but it's a great hobby for people, and I do it because it means a lot to people. It means a lot to the kids. It means a lot to the hobbyists. It means a lot to me. It's made my life the way it is. So I'm actually the luckiest boat nerd in the world.
How can you submit photos for consideration?
You can email them to me, and the address is in the book. It's easy, knowyourshifts@gmail.com. We like a high resolution file. We like pictures on sunny days because the book is in color. Why do we want a draft picture? We like unusual pictures. If a boat's in the Soo locks, unless it's sinking in the Soo locks, it's generally not very interesting. But if you're, got a picture of a tugboat towing a boat, or you got skies that behind it that are just amazing skies, that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. And if you look at the book, you'll notice there's very few of my pictures in there. I try and get other people's pictures in so they can feel like they're a part of the book and of the community.
A lot of people use drones now.
Oh, God, yeah, drones. Yeah, okay. Great vantage point for pictures. If you wanted a picture that a drone gets you, in the old days, you had to be on a bridge, or you had to rent a helicopter, or be on a plane or something, and now you just sit on your tail and just kind of do this thing and look in your screen. But the pictures are amazing, and a couple of times when the light was on the other side, I was wishing I had a drone. There was a January day when there were 6 vessels all lined up, stopped in the ice with the sun shining on them on the wrong side. I had a drone. I wish Hey, guess what? Other people sent me that picture because they had a drone, so I didn't have to spend $3,000 on a top-of-the-line drone and then fly it into a tree.
I know all of our third cities lost like 13 drones.
Oh yeah, he's an extreme droner.
Yes.
He'll get on a freighter, and then he'll send the drone out in front of the freighter, so you get that picture with the big wave on it. So it's easy to send a drone off of a steel ship, but it's not so easy to get it back. And he's had, cut his hands cut up by the little propellers. Eric Treese put out like a goalie net from hockey on the deck of the Wilfred Sykes to put the drone into the hockey. Guys have all kinds of ways to catch that stupid drone. The metal kind of interferes with its guidance sometimes, but they're getting a lot better about that. Now, of course, now the regulations have come out with the drone, so you can't fly in your airports. You can't go over, I think it's 200 feet. You can't do this, you can't do that, but it seems like everybody manages to find a way around it. So in the Soo, when there's a lot of boat watchers, you see the drone guys go, okay, I'm going to be at 200 feet. So, okay, so I'll be at 150. So I don't interfere. They're all planning their little drone space. Yeah, so they don't run into each other. Captain Treese lost a drone in Port Huron because a bird, a seagull, took an extraordinary interest in that drone and pecked it out of the sky. The last picture that got transmitted was this big seagull face. It was gone.
Tell us about one of your more memorable winters, maybe your winter experiences trying to photograph ships.
Oh, I'll tell you about the one I almost died on. That's a good one. But first I'll tell you, when I was a kid in the Soo in the 60s, they were doing something, experimental program called winter navigation, where they tried to run the boats all winter. Didn't go so well because of ice. But I mean, I'm wading through snow up to my knees, trying to get pictures. It's so cold. Film days, we're using film. The film was so brittle it would break in the camera when you tried to advance it if you're out in the cold too long. So, but then if you brought your cold camera into a warm car, everything fogged up. So there had to be like a happy medium where you could do that. I lost more pictures because the film broke than anything else. It's 30 degrees below zero, and the sun's out, and it doesn't feel that cold, but your fingers are dead after a couple of minutes. That's fun. But I'll tell you my near-death experience, because it happened in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, at Bay Shipbuilding Company in January, 20 years ago. I knew the shipkeeper for Great Lakes Fleet 1,000-footers, and one of their boats, Edgar B. Spear, was in the dry dock. And so we were over there. We were down on the floor of the dry dock. It had rained the previous day, and then it got cold, and all that rainwater froze to the side of the boat, made ice. And then the sun came up in the morning. We were down there. So I'm standing here taking this picture of this massive ship, front of me. And the ship keeper's kind of standing here, and my friend Chris is standing here, and like, that's not exactly the right angle. Let me just move over here. I did that, and a sheath of ice from the backside of the boat let go, shaped like an arrow, and it landed right where I'd been standing. And we looked at each other. We didn't say anything. We just looked at each other. Went up to the galley. We had coffee. And we thought about all the bad things that would have come out of the fact that I'd have been killed by ice in base ship. So that was the one time. So I since it was the entry spear, I call it the spear of ice. Came down. So that was pretty much. I was wearing a hard hat that would not have made any difference in that weight of that ice coming down. So. And then I thought, oh, they'll say he died doing what he loved. It's like, no, there's no consolation in that for me.
You use the term freighters, of course they carry freight. But I've oftentimes heard the term Lakers.
Yeah.
And is that a smaller one that is more navigable in the Great Lakes only?
Well, yeah,
That's the history of that.
yeah, that's the deal. So a freighter is just a generic word for any vessel that carries any kind of freight. So it can be small or big. A Laker is a unique kind of vessel that grew out of the particular needs of the Great Lakes, with the superstructure in the front and the engines in the back and the middle part for the cargo. That's kind of considered your traditional Laker. Now a lot of them have changed from that. All the quarters are in the back. There's a self-unloading boom on the deck that can swing out to one side or the other and unload the cargo. But it's still considered a Laker. So they're both kind of generic terms, but freighter is really generic. Laker is more the lakes. We also have salties, which are
What again?
salties.
Okay.
Salties are vessels that come from saltwater, international ships that come in, and they might bring some steel products in, and they might take grain or some other cargo out overseas. They bring in windmill parts, what have you. So, because those are saltwater boats, they're called salties. There also is the great debate: are they ships or are they boats on the Great Lakes? So, no sailor that I ever knew said, "I'm going back to the ship." Everybody says, "I'm going to the boat, going to go catch the boat. Let's go look at the boat. Let's go take a boat picture." So there are boats on the Great Lakes. Submarines are boats also in the Navy. But my book is called Know Your Ships. Well, I didn't do it. If I could go back in time to 1959 and tell Tom Mass to call it Know Your Boats, I would have, but it's been a lot easier for me. So that's kind of the thing with the boats. I go on a cruise ship. It's a ship, not a boat. Some of it kind of depends on where you are. The whole terminology that's native to the Great Lakes culture is it's a boat.
So, speaking of terminology, I thought I knew this, and then I realized I really don't, unless I don't believe someone else. So here's Lake Michigan. I guess if a ship, a boat is going south, to wherever, it's either southbound or downbound,
Right.
upbound. Will you explain differences? Because like I said, I thought I knew it and I don't know.
Generally, it's kind of loose, not always. Downbound boats are the ones technically coming from Lake Superior and going down the Great Lakes, down to Lake Michigan, down to Lake Huron, down through the St. Clair River, down through Lake Ontario, and down through the St. Lawrence Seaway. And upbound boats are coming in the other direction, up from the ocean, up through the system and up to Lake Superior. But an upbound boat at the Mackinac Bridge can turn into a downbound boat. If it doesn't go to Lake Superior, it goes under the bridge and then the lake goes down. All of a sudden it's downbound. Local usage terminology. So it can be both. Yeah, we do weird things on the Great Lakes like that.
When you publish the book, all the information in there, each individual boat and each company and all that, there's just a wealth of information. Do the shipping companies do they supply you with all that, or do you have people that do research on the boats that
Both.
come up with all that?
both. Some shipping companies don't know or care that I exist. Others are very helpful and cooperative. I get a lot of information from the vessel registries that are online. There's a thing called marine traffic. Some of you folks may use their AIS system to pinpoint where the boats are on the Great Lakes. And you get that for free. But if you pay like $500 a year, you get this whole other part that tells you the ownership and the build history and all the dimensions of every ship in the world. So if I see a saltwater ship come in and I don't know what it is, I can type its name into their database and I can get all the ports it's been to recently, the dimensions of the strokes of their engines, how fast they can go, all that kind of information kind of gets pulled in. From that, I have some of my young people. One of them is a mate on the steamer Alpina. He's a tugboat fanatic. And he makes sure all my tugboat listings are up to snuff. And he also is pretty good at proofreading the rest of it. I got a guy, his name is Matt Miner, who's really enthusiastic about saltwater ships. So he takes care of that for me. I got another guy that's, his passion is the engines. So I have an engine section, he takes care of that part for me. So, and these are all volunteers. They just do it to help out for the cause and because I like to do it. So I get information from all kinds of places. Shipping companies have websites now. You can look up things on those websites. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. Are they measuring length overall? Length between perpendiculars? Is it gross tonnage? Is it net tonnage? Is it dead weight tonnage? There's all those kinds of fun things to figure out. The ownership of a foreign vessel is, it's very easy to say that ship there on the lakes is owned by the Interlake Steamship Company. We know that. But here's a ship from the ocean that's owned by somebody and managed by somebody else. And then there's something called a beneficial owner. And you've got to figure out who actually, if you look at the stack and try to figure out whose colors are on the stack to see which company actually owns it. That is a corporate structural nightmare. But Matt tries to put it together as best that he can. All the listings are updated every year as best we can. I go to 2 websites every year, Transport Canada, which lists, a Canadian site, lists all the vessels. You type in the vessel name and you can get all the information about it. And you type in the owner's name, you get all the ships that company owns. Beautiful. US side does not have such an efficient system. We have a Coast Guard database that lists everything but the owner. Well, I really need to know that. So there's you have to kind of try to figure it out, but I use those databases all the time. To keep track of just what's going on, our observations. I'll see a boat come up and, oh my God, what's that stack market? What did they do? They changed something. So I got to go look it up and see what happened. We've got all the smokestack logos in our books, so I have to take a picture. If there's an unfamiliar stack, and get my artist to make it up to get it in the book. So a lot of little detailed moving parts. And then I got to get it right because there are people out there that will notice the tiniest little mistake, just the tiniest, and they'll never let me forget it. I had a beautiful picture of a lighthouse on Lake Michigan. And my caption said it was in Lake Huron. Ray Sheldon, the captain of one of the freighters, teased me for years about, and where's that lighthouse? Ray, it's in Lake Michigan. I know you told me. But, I mean, they spot these little things. No, it's not 20 feet, 2 inches wide. It's 20 feet, 4 inches wide. How do they know that? And again, it's what database did I use and what database they're using. So it can be kind of a little bit of confusion. But it's fun. In the wintertime, I can't go out on my boat, can't do a lot of things. I sit at my computer and I go through boat pictures and put together a book I like. Then when it starts getting nicer, I get out and sell it. And I go on my pontoon boat, take more pictures, and start the whole cycle all over again. I think I have 2 weeks in the fall. Maybe I'm not busy. Sometimes I think, and sometimes during the year, I'm working more than I actually worked when I was a newspaper man. I work 40 hours a week. Just how it works out. Anyone else? I'd like to thank you guys for coming out and checking out my show. I'd like to thank Paige and all the people here at the Door County Marine Museum for having me. I'd like to thank and acknowledge all the folks that are on the Zoom. Thank you for tuning in. And hopefully invite me back some other times because I have other programs you might like to take a look at. So thanks so much, everybody. Thank you. You watched the bonded page. Newspaper. We shared stories all on our drive around Door County about the sort